Yeah. She was like, you know, you're gay, right? I was like, I'm not gay. This is a picture of my boyfriend, Gage. And I showed her I showed her a picture in my wallet, not my purse.
Hello, I am Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. Melissa Ferrick is an American singer-songwriter whose career exploded when, in 1991, she was a last-minute replacement support act for a Morrissey tour. Since then, she has released an impressive number of albums and has even had one of her songs, Drive, named as a lesbian anthem. And trust me, that song is filthy. We caught up to talk about Manray, a bar in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which closed in 2005 after nearly 20 years of business.
One thing that's really interesting is that there used to be only certain nights that were okay to be gay in certain clubs. I don't know if you had that experience. So I think that Man Ray was, and I could be, well, you can check the history on this, but
it was a nightclub in Central Square, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Did you Wikipedia it?
Yeah, it's on Wikipedia. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it say, was it Wednesday nights? I think it was Wednesday nights was queer night or like gay night. I used to go to goth gay night. It was amazing. That was the other thing, was I feel like also we used to have that kind of space, right? Where we would drill down even more to like, not just gay, but like specifically what kind of gay, right? Like it was like, what kind of gay fashion, what kind of gay music, like it just would get more and more siloed. And so you would have these specific nights of the week, especially even at gay venues or gay bars where it would be like, Tuesday night, is beard night, and Wednesday night is dyke night, and Thursday night is goth night. And I love that about our culture. I loved that.
You love that? Oh, that's really interesting.
I loved it. I loved it because I felt invited at all of the spaces, though. Like, or maybe that's just how kind of manic I am. That I just be like, I'll go, and I would just dress up and assume I was invited everywhere. That's kind of. How gay I am. I feel like I'm invited everywhere.
So you've never been to one of those nights full of shirtless men who are sweaty and hairless and are like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Oh, yes, I've been there. But
you're like, honestly, whatever, I'm here to have a good time.
Exactly.
Fuck yourself.
They're not paying any attention to me anyway. They're all trying to see themselves in the mirror. So who cares?
But you're like in the way. You're like, in the eye, like blocking the eye line of someone who they fancy.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like white parties and okay.
So it wasn't a queer specific club. It just had certain nights. Mm-hmm. And one of those nights was a gothic gay night. That's very niche. Was there a big audience for that?
Well, it felt like there were thousands of people there because I was 19. I'm sure that there were not thousands of people. There were probably, I don't know, maybe 100 people there. But this was, I was in college. I had a fake ID. I was just out of the closet. I was loving every second of it. I was like really into Sinead O'Connor's first album. And I was really into like The Church. The Church had a really big record out at that time. And bands like Gene Loves Jezebel and Susie and the Banshees and Susie Sue. And Roxy music was always a good standby. That was always kind of a good slow dance. Lots of Camel lights, lots of smoking cigarettes, lots of lots of single malts. No, Camel.
Oh, okay, Camel lights. Oh, I always thought you went to a club full of candles. I was like, fire hazard.
Yeah, so I loved it. I would say that, but it wasn't necessarily that there was a goth queer scene going on, although there probably was. It was more just that that's what the kind of music that they would play on that particular night. And so we would go, basically the nights were scheduled around the kind of music that it was. It felt.
So you slathered on a bunch of black eyeliner, you got your fake ID, and you went to the club. Do you remember like that feeling of going through the door the first time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it felt dangerous because it was also in Central Square in Cambridge, which at that time was a bit of a dangerous area. And it was on like a one-way street, and it was dark. I mean, not only were all of the clothes dark and the music was dark, but the club itself was dark. It was one of those situations where, you know, you were very likely to end up making out with someone that you couldn't see. And that was fine. That was almost expected. I mean, that was part of why you were going there. You're like, obvious.
Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you don't have to look at them, then that, yeah, bonus.
Even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
and
can't
I
find their
remember just
imperfections.
kind of leaning against the wall. You know, it was a brick or a cement square, windowless building, as many of them are. And yeah, I remember being really excited and like living on the edge. You know, that was something that really appealed to me. Yeah, I loved it.
And so did you go on your own?
No, I went with I would go with just a very small group of people, maybe 2 or 3 other girls that I was friends with.
So then what was your coming out journey like then? So were you out by the time that you started going?
Yeah, it was just, so I first came out when I was 16. And so I was going to Manray when I was 19. So I was 16. I had my first same-sex encounter, like queer encounter, I'll call it, because I don't like to use the sex thing. But my first queer encounter was in Boston at Berklee College of Music summer program. And I met a girl there that I liked a lot. And she told me that I was gay, which was a shock to me. Shockingly.
Oh, really?
Like, a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. She was like, you know, you're gay, right? I was like, I'm not gay. This is a picture of my boyfriend, Gage. And I showed her I showed her a picture in my wallet, not my purse. So anyway, her name was Jamie, and we made out, and she sang me Janis Joplin songs, and it was awesome. And I was 16, and I'm really lucky, though. I grew up in a family where I wasn't, my parents were really accepting. I mean, it was hard for them, but I was accepted. And so when I went to college that next year, I went to college I entered when I was 17, and then I turned 18 shortly after. And then I was going to the clubs. I mean, right away. I guess I might have been 18 when I was going to Man Ray, because that was my first year of college. Mm-hmm. So I was out, but I probably had like my first girlfriend. Well, I did have my first girlfriend in high school, but maybe I was on my second girlfriend. I don't know.
Oh yeah, just breaking hearts left, right, and center.
I had a girlfriend and a boyfriend, so I was calling myself bisexual for a little while there, and I loved Jeff. I had this boyfriend named Jeff, who I loved a lot. I ran into him years later in Chicago, but anyway.
But his photo is no longer in your wallet.
No, it's not. No, but I wouldn't mind. I would love to know what he's doing. He's a great human, great person. Yeah. So yeah, that's what it was like,
And so you'd found other queer friends at college that you went to the club with?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was this woman named Betty that would come to the queer club with me, and she was gay. And then this girl, Sarah, and I think I was dating Sarah. Was there any? Yeah, I think we were all identifying as queer. But I do remember, so not only at this time, so we're talking early 90s to let's just call early 90s to mid 90s, because that was the time period where I was going to those kinds of clubs. So not only did we not have our own actual, I mean, we had a couple of our own always gay places like Club Cafe, which still exists, right? And Henrietta's, which still exists. But normally that wasn't the norm. Normally you had regular clubs, straight, straight clubs, straight owned and straight run clubs, usually owned by straight white cis men, who had the money and the power that would own a club. And then they would have certain nights that they would give to these, historically marginalized communities. And one of those communities is the queer community. And so we would have our own night. And then sooner or later, that night would become so awesome that it would get co-opted by the straights, right? Remember this? And so then they would come in and be like, it would be a cool thing to be a cool straight person that was okay, that was cool enough to like go to gay nights, right? And then it was like that gay night isn't as fun anymore, so we'd have to start a new one at a new club. And then so I feel like that's kind of how the gay nights would bounce around, which would be when we would get infiltrated by the others. The others. And we're like, we used to be the others.
And so much harder to keep track of those things when there's no kind of internet or anything like that. Like, how did you know? I mean, obviously you knew when it was passé, but how did you know what the next thing was?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't even know how I knew. How did we know where to go? Well, we would call each other, like on the telephone. Shocking.
How scary is that thought, by the way?
So scary. So weird. I would like remember so many people's phone numbers. I barely have my partner's phone number memorized now, and I have to fill out a thing where it's like your partner's number. I'm like, what's your phone number? Like, what's your birthday? I guess in the local, we had like the Boston Phoenix here, which would be like the Village Voice would be the version of it in New York, right? Where they would list the clubs. So in New York, if you were going to go, like the Paramount would have certain nights which were, directed toward the queer community. And it would say in the paper, gay night, or a men's night or a ladies' night out. It's always a big
ladies.
One. Like, yeah, ladies. And we're like, so this is for the guys or this is for...
And so before long, you started kind of playing out and building a name for yourself as a musician, which kind of takes you away from the queer scene, doesn't it? It takes you into coffee shops and bars that are specifically for music.
Yeah, that, and I think I'm really glad that you bring that up, because I think I'm not quite sure that a lot of people have actually really understood that. And I've had to explain that to people before when they're like, oh, so you spent your life playing in gay bars. And I'm like, no, what? It's kind of like, you wouldn't say that to a straight singer-songwriter. Oh, you spent your life playing in straight bars. No, you're right. I just started playing music venues. I started playing places where music happened. And that's why when we were conversing before we got to get together today, I do think that panel, I don't remember the panel that I was on, but I was on a panel, and there are many panels. I've been on many panels, knew it. And I love a panel, so don't get me wrong. And one of the people that was on the panel is this gay man who had something to do with, trending and branding and social media marketing specialist, and really, really intelligent conversation around that. And he kind of just off the cuff said, which I found so touching, but I could tear up even just thinking about it. He said, but you created queer space wherever you went. And I was like, what? I didn't say that again.
I did that.
And he was, because he was young, he's probably a decade or maybe 15 years younger than me, and knew of me. He was obviously not really my target market, but he definitely was aware of the work that I had done. And because of the work that he does in social media and branding and marketing, can see someone like me and say, oh, this is what Melissa Ferrick did. If I were to market this or brand this or tell this story, this is what I would say about this person as part of her story, that during the time period which was also, poignant, which was, after Melissa Etheridge came out and was on a billboard in Times Square with Julie Cyphers, which was her wife at the time. And, at the time that Ellen DeGeneres came out on TV, and Katie Lang was out, and Elton John came out, and, you know, we had this kind of rush in the 90s of very, very famous people coming out. But we also had less very, very famous people playing in the bars. You know, one of those people was me. And so for me, I think that one of the things that is cool is that as I grew up in gay bars, not being gay bars, but certain nights of bars being gay, I wonder about whether or not I didn't kind of, you know, that is exactly what I did. As I traveled everywhere I went, there was a little, you know, a little posse of gay people or queer and queer allies. Yeah. Kind of bouncing along behind me, making it, you know, a night for themselves. And what's lovely about that is that it's less about me and more about each other, right? It's less about, and I've always believed in that. I've always believed that it's less about the genre of music as it is about the community that is collective, that is collecting. So it always makes me happy whenever I go to a venue or a space where I'm supporting a queer artist. I know there's going to be other queer people there. So to me, it really doesn't matter if it's spoken word, if it's punk, if it's goth, if it's singer-songwriter. I know that there's going to be like-minded people in a room with me. And so I feel safe in that kind of environment. So,
yeah, you've got like a different baseline with those people.
Exactly.
And then so in terms of your performing career, did you start out in open mics and things like that and work your way up?
Yeah, when I first started playing out, I started playing at a venue called TT the Bears place, like TT and then the Bears. And that was right across the street from Manray. So that's kind of cool. And and I played there open mic, and then I got maybe a gaggle of 15 or 16 people that would come to every Tuesday night open mic to watch me play. And then the bartender gave me my own, you know, 6 p.m. door, 7:30 on stage slot on a Wednesday night. And that's how I built my fan base. So I did that. And then I would get a opening slot for a national act that didn't have an opener that would come through every once in a while. I'm sure you know the scene. It's the same story from all of us, right? Like someone will come into town and their opener isn't with them, or they don't have one for that market. And so the club owner may like you or like your work, so they call you and they say, hey, do you want to open for David Broza? I got to open for David Broza once. I remember that because I really like his work and the story. And I mean, I can remember lots of, you know, random one-offs. And then the random one-off came that wasn't a one-off, which was the Morrissey tour. And that's when everything changed. That was Kill Uncle 1991. And so that happened in Boston. The first show was July 3rd. And then the next day was the 4th of July. So that's a holiday here in the States. And then the 5th, I got a phone call that said Moz had listened to my cassette and he wanted to know if I could finish the tour. So so that was it. My whole life changed. I was 20.
Wow, like that. Wow. Let's not focus on the Morrissey tour. Let's focus on some of those kind of patchier, you know, one-off kind of gigs. Obviously, the example that you gave before is when you're headlining and you're bringing in an audience that makes that queer space. When you're at an open mic where there's 20 other people performing, or you're supporting someone who may have a predominantly heterosexual audience, did you find that you were moderating your performance or your between song banter or anything like that?
No, I don't.
So you're not
sorry. Like, was I straightifying it?
Yeah. Were you leaving details out or sanitizing it?
I don't know. I might have, I think that strikes me more so with how I would present myself physically than my banter. Although when I'm headlining my own show, I definitely have a different banter because I'm headlining. And so the assumption is that everyone who's paid however much
loves
that costs,
you.
Paid that, right. They paid that to see you. And so you can it's your show. So I think that's one thing. When I'm opening, I definitely am scanning the room. I'm kind of vibing out, who's there, what they think is funny, what they don't think is funny. But it's interesting that you asked, I wonder if I was, there have been times where I definitely would feel like I was more nervous that they, it's so funny to think of now, like that they, was I worried that they might think I was gay? I mean, this is like when I told my sister that Katie Lang was gay, or no, that Jodie Foster was gay. And she was like, no, she's not. You think everyone's gay. And I'm like, wow, if you, it's like, or that Katie Lang was gay or something, like, of course I'm queer. Like you'd have to be in the complete dark to see me, feel my energy and not think, it's possible she's queer. Like you wouldn't be like, that girl is straight. You would not think that, so I don't think I tried too hard ever to not, but sometimes I think there would be occasions where, like, I remember maybe it was just more because I thought that looking a certain way would make me more famous,
Yeah.
If I wore like if I wore MAC lipstick in 1998, that, that was all the rage, the flat matte MAC lipstick. And so I did that, and I wore vinyl pants, and I would do things more to conform because I thought it was what the industry wanted, not necessarily to hide my queerness. It was more to get a door, like to make a song sound like it would work. Same kind of idea, right?
Yeah.
Let's write a single. Let's write a song that will work. It's like, what does that mean?
Let's produce it in a certain way. Let's fit it in a certain box. But so, like, did you not even, just reflecting on my own experiences, this is an interview with you, but I'm just going to make it about me.
Oh yeah, no, good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat in that, like, no one would ever be in a bar watching me perform and be like, oh, I wonder if he's got a girlfriend. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to try and trick people, but it's that whole thing of like, oh, I'm just going to not shove it down their throat. And I might just not play this particular song because it involves graphic details about my sex life, which means I have like 2 songs I can play. But like, it also means that, there's like, I'm not going to get that hostility, I suppose.
Yeah, but then it's a great question is, then are you really being truly yourself? And then when we think about that even further, I totally get this, what you're talking about. Am I then not giving people the opportunity to be fully themselves? I mean, Tom Waits brings all of himself everywhere he goes, right? So why not? Why not bring, when I played, have I not played Drive in certain rooms? For sure, but only because there were like young children present.
They've
really
got to learn sometime.
Except when you listen to that song, it's actually not all that graphic. But where I said to someone once, or I finally came to the realization, I said, if there's face paint involved, and the sun is still out, I won't play it. But at the same time, I don't know. I think who are we really trying to save face for?
I don't know if it's save face. It's maybe surviving the moment.
Yeah, it's not saving face. You're right. It's surviving. Yeah, that's great. So like I opened for Weezer. Here's a good example. Did the Weezer Buddy Holly tour. Okay. So I'm playing in front of predominantly young girls and boys, right, who are white, straight, and at that time, this was before. I mean, Weezer was cool then, but they're way cooler now. But at this time, this was like the height of their fame. And I remember I was playing with them at one of the shows was at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and they used to give you an apple when you would go to the venue. It was like a thing that they did. And during my opening slot,
did you get a chance to wash it?
What, the apple?
Yeah, just like a dirty apple.
Oh no, this was way pre-COVID. Nobody washed anything. We just.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So sorry, I interrupted you. Someone threw an apple.
No. They threw an apple at me and it hit me. And it's in the guitar and it like exploded up. But then there was this moment of Like the whole audience is going to turn against me, or they're going to go with me. Like it was that moment. And this is just an example of like, you know, when I was doing that tour, I wasn't out as like a gay. I think maybe I had just come out actually as a gay artist, because I had some articles in like Out Magazine and The Advocate, which I always joke about. I'm like, if you come out and it's only in gay press,
if a tree falls in the woods, yeah.
We already know. Yeah. It's like, it's a way to get a pretty picture of yourself on the cover of something. Look, good lighting and makeup. And, but so anyway, this is an example of like being in front of a predominantly straight crowd and having them turn on you. And so someone did, and they threw the apple. And then there was this moment where I was like, oh, they're all going to, and something happened. And then the rest of them just started clapping and like egging me on to make it, to keep going. And there was this like kind of amazing moment where the person who threw the apple at me ended up being the outcast and not me. And that felt really awesome and empowering. So
that bastard, let's track him down. So going back to that statement from before, when someone said that you made a space queer by bringing your performance, by bringing yourself, what elements do you think helped create that?
When you asked me that question, I thought of two different approaches to answering the question. So I'll just tell you those two. So the first one that I went to, which was that it starts from the person who's willing to book you, right? So the fact that at Shuba's in Chicago, for instance, was willing to book me as a headlining act and have me, and then play me for 2 shows a night, and then 2 nights for 2 shows, do 4 shows at Shuba's, and so what enables that is not just me being willing to tour. So there's the my end of it, right? Like I'm willing to tour, I'm willing to, you know, have live the traveling life of a circus member, you know, the way that we do if you're a touring independent artist. But there's also what you're asking for from the community at large, right? So you need to find bars that are willing to book a queer act, and you need to find a fan base that's willing to go to that bar. So I do know that's actually something that I hadn't thought about in a long time, which is there have been certain bars that certain fans have told me that are like scary for them to go to. Like they're like, we don't really go to this bar. They're like, just so you know, this isn't really like I wish I could think of a specific one. I hadn't thought that we would talk about this, so I didn't think this through before the interview. But I think that's a good point to bring up. You know, I mean, that's the only you can only get that information, as you know, from being on the ground and being with your fans, right? By playing our shows. When you have a indie career or a career playing music for people that you get to meet after the shows and at least kind of start to recognize a couple of them per city, you'd be like, oh, I'm pretty sure I know that guy. He always comes to my show or whatever. So to get that kind of trust with your fan base is also something really special, you know, that not every artist gets. So I do think it's important to listen to that. And
how did that work, like in the 90s then? Sorry, it's like in the olden days before the internet.
Yes, exactly.
Like, how did that work when like you don't have that direct line to your fans? Is it just talking after gigs?
Yeah, it was then. But I mean, so we're going to fast forward now, because after the Moz thing happened and then I did Atlantic, and so I started really doing my own, my indie career really started in, I want to say like 1999. So the early aughts was really the big time for me. So at least we did have the internet, and I had a cell phone and a pager, but we didn't have iTunes yet. iTunes was 2005, I think. So as of 2005, we had iTunes and stuff like that. But so it was the internet. It was.
Oh, okay.
Because before that, I was talking to people after shows, and that is mostly how you did it. But what I'm talking about was more in my early aughts, mid 2000s career time period. Yeah.
And there is that magical thing when you are performing in a room and you make that connection and give permission for people to be themselves and bring themselves to the audience and engage in a certain way. I'm making massive assumptions about you because you're just so like casual and like, yeah, oh, I'm just so cool. This is just how I am. But like, is there anything that you consciously do in order to create that space?
Is there anything that I consciously do to create that space? No, but I can tell you that when I'm not in a good space, I can tell that I'm unable to create that I'm, like when you're not having a good day, when you're when you're just exhausted or you've just had it, you just can't do it. And that happens to everybody. It just so happens that in our jobs,
it's quite noticeable. Yeah.
It's quite noticeable. You can't take a mental health day. People are like, you're on stage on your mental health day. And people are like, why is she so pissed off? And I'm like, because I don't want to be here today. Fuck you. Couldn't call in sick, asshole. I was just thinking about, well, I wasn't thinking about it. It had to do with actually an assignment that students are doing this last week about participatory performance. And I was thinking about how awesome participatory performances are, right?
Where I think there's nothing worse. It's terrifying.
You don't like it?
As an audience member, it's terrifying.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't want to be the person that Cirque du Soleil chooses.
Oh, yes. No.
But part of a kind of participatory performance can be when you are just in the audience singing along, where they're not asking you to come up on stage, but like it's that chorus, it's the end of the night, and you're like, yeah, da, 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 and then everyone's doing the swing, and you're with your friend, and there's this moment of collab, right? You're not in a theater at Broadway on the ground in the dark and Hamilton is happening in front of you. And you have nothing to do but just clap at the end of each section and then that's it. And I was thinking about how I think that when I'm able to create space, those moments of singing along at shows, I don't know if you've had this, I would assume you have had this happen where people sing along to one of your songs. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like one of the most incredible things that have ever happened to me. It's very, very bizarre. It's an out of body experience. It's very odd to have yourself sung at you, by a bunch of mostly queers. People who have known you and in a lot of ways feel like they know you, even though they know you through lyrics and songs that you've written that are somewhat about you, but masked behind many other people's relationships and also masked behind good rhyme.
Yeah.
A good rhyme and a better version of the story, you know? So, yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
And so I'm interested in this like pissed off thing because I guess some artists, it's easier to get up on stage and be like, hey, everyone, I'm really pissed off today. I had a shit day. I'm going to do some songs. Do you never feel like you're able to do that with your audience?
Oh, I used to do it all the time.
Oh, okay.
People used to come. They used to come to my show and there would be some people that would come to my show and they would try to get me pissed off because the vibe was that I would do a better show if I was mad. So I remember this one girl in particular this one show, it was in Indianapolis, Indiana, at a place called Radio. And she was leaning against the stage. She was in the front row, but her back was to me and I was playing and she was on the phone with her back. And so I leaned over and I was like, hey, and I pretended that I thought this was a great idea. And then I wanted to say hi to the person on the phone. So I took her phone and I went like this and I put her phone on top of the drum kit and I left it there for the rest of the show. It was awesome. So yeah, I would yell at people for talking while I was playing.
Oh, but this wasn't her tactic to get you to play better.
I don't know, but it made for quite the show because everyone else was interested in like being on their best behavior, is now, because they're worried that like they're like on that intensity, that feeling of like, oh my God, are they going to get really mad? Kind of hovers over the whole performance, right? So it kind of
it's a whole different type of participatory audience.
It's called A Room Full of Adult Children of Alcoholics on the Edge of Freaking Out.
Being flung back to grade school.
Yeah. What kind of mood are you going to be in today?
But yeah, so fascinating. Like when you're really angry and pissed off, and performing. In some ways, you're like, I just want to get this over with. So there's like an intensity to the way you play because you're just like, let's just do this. Fuck you all.
Do you feel like you play better when you're angry?
There's something interesting about anger because it blocks out other things for me. So like it will block out nerves because I'm just pissed off. So then I'm not nervous about playing and I don't mess up in like chords or whatever.
Interesting. Well, it is a much more focused emotion, isn't it? Than happiness. Happiness and joy are much more wide.
Yeah.
And anger is much more pointed, right? Or concentration or passion. And so I think I have the research that I'm into is in this idea of creativity and emotion and psychopathology. I'm very like deeply involved in that work. And I find what you're talking about, the emotions that can drive performances, or that whole conversation is extremely interesting to me. Sadness too is another one that's extremely wide and hard to control, right?
I don't know. Sadness.
It can be.
Yeah. I don't know.
Grief is pretty wide. I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe grief can be both.
Yeah, I mean, grief. There's no focus with grief, is there? It's just all over the place. I haven't experienced very much actual grief in my life over losing anyone or anything, but I can really relate to the performing angry. I think directed anger is a really good thing sometimes, and so for me, I think, and similarly to you, anger is a kind of passion. Or to have a passionate anger, like an angst. Mm-hmm. And I like working from that space of intensity. So do you want me to get my phone out and start talking on it and turn my back to you right now?
No, because I'm having so much fun.
Oh no, we'll like channel your
No, but
anger.
I want to write a song with you about this. I want to co-write something with you about. I mean, I love the idea. I would love to hear other people. We should start a thread or something, or a blog or something.
An anger
about this.
club.
Yeah. And is it anger or is it passion?
Do you know what we could do? We could have like a songwriting circle where we just all insult each other for like half an hour and then go away and write songs. And
then workshop our anger-driven songs.
Yes.
Anger-inspired songs.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And you'd be so, I'm gonna prove Melissa wrong. Fuck her. I'm gonna write the best song ever.
And then, like in parentheses, can we write "crying is allowed"? It's okay if your feelings really get hurt. We'll have it as like a safe word. I'll have a safe word like orange when you're actually really hurting my feelings, because it doesn't take much. That's great.
Yeah, well,
that's great.
You just need to channel that. All right.
Yep.
So if we cycle back to Manray and the young woman who went there and made out with people that she didn't ever actually see because it was in the dark and pressed up against a wall. If you were to run into her now, what would you say?
What would I say? As much as I want to reply with, something, a part of me wants to say something to you, like, or to myself, like, remember this, or take note, kind of a thing. Be a little more present. But I want to make sure that but I do remember it, And so I don't necessarily think I would say that, because I think I did do a good job at remembering it, because I'm remembering it, and I can really recall. It was so lovely the way you asked me what it felt like when I first walked in there. I really appreciated that question, because it helped me to really think about the sight and the smells and the sounds and the feel of it. And I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but it's also really nice to know that I can recall those things. And so I think what I might say is to try to enjoy myself. I think I have a hard time having fun, and in my nowness, I'm trying more to. It sounds so silly, but I'm trying more to have fun. Like, even I go for a walk, I'll try to. Like, it sounds so stupid, but I do. I try to, like, look up through the trees and look at the sky and notice the moon and think, are you enjoying yourself? Like, think about your body in this air, on this planet, in this kind of really acknowledging my visibility, acknowledging my existence to myself, because I spent so long. And I'm just the kind of person who has lived a life so as like a moving target, as if I were chasing after something that was never catchable. It's always the next gig. It's the next gig when I get there. Yeah, very hard to be where I am. Yeah,
and I mean, when you said about struggling to have fun, or to embrace fun things, that resonated for me. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently, in that when you're a creative person, there is this kind of, there's no end to the work, is there? It's right. Like, oh, I can always write another song, or I can always do this, and I can always do this. And so there's this kind of feeling of guilt sometimes, for me anyway, that I'm like squandering moments because I'm not being productive. And that means I come at everything with this, like, okay, but what's going to come out of this? Like, so a lot of time with friendships, that happens for me. It's like, well, oh, we should have a project together. We should do this together. We should do this together, rather than like, well, let's just hang out and have fun. Because I always want things to be, to have an outcome.
There's like an urgency.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and also I'm hearing a little bit of the idea too, which I have fallen into this before too. This kind of mindset where, I mean, I just did it to you. Like, we should write a song. Where it's like it's always the next thing rather than.
Well, so you didn't mean that?
No, I do. But like, you're right. Like that this moment in and of itself is to be present for it. It's important. But so I think having fun, I think what I would say to the girl at Manray, is like, maybe don't take yourself so seriously is one thing. Like, relax a little bit. Like, but I also don't want to take away how brilliant and awesome my urgency is. I mean, it's only because of, and you seem to be a really similar person to me in that way, that most of the people I've met who have self-propelled careers, at all sorts of different levels of whatever, stardom or fame or success means, they're really self-driven, highly productive, highly creative people who are the most interesting people to me. And they are rarely satisfied. And if there is a moment of satisfaction, it doesn't usually last for very long. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want to listen to any of my music except for whatever I'm working on right now. And what I'm working on right now is the best thing I've ever done. And wait till you hear it. That's kind of my mindset. And then I'll put something out and I will listen to it by myself in my car really loudly for maybe 3 months. And then I will never listen to it. I mean, it's painful to listen to my own work. So I think that
That is
there's
so fast. Yeah. It's so interesting.
aren't you that way too, though?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like when you get the first mix or the first master of a track, you put it on your phone and you go out and you go for a walk and you listen to it and you're like, oh, I am the shit.
Like,
I
it's
am so
amazing.
fucking good. And then like 3 months later you listen to it and you're like, what? What? Why did I
Like,
what's the
oh,
inflection there? Why did I say that? Like why did I and like, oh, I
yeah,
never want to
I
listen to
do
this
that.
again. Can I get it deleted off Spotify?
That's amazing. I never got as far as thinking if I could delete it because I'm sure I can't. But I definitely am like, why did I not hear that the way that I sang that word is just, it's just horrifying. Like I can't, like, A, I'm mad that I didn't hear it. And then B, I'm pissed that no one had the balls to tell me that I sounded like an idiot. I'm like, why is no one that I'm working with able to say to me, Melissa, this vocal doesn't sound like what you said. You know what I mean? It's just so, but that's good because it means we're not done. I think that, artists who think that something, there should not be, I mean, everything's a snapshot, right? So you just keep putting stuff out and that's okay. You shouldn't, I think, do we really even, I don't even know that I would want to be satisfied because then there would be nothing left. There would be nothing else to do. So
Is this you justifying it to yourself?
no.
I've been thinking a lot recently about the word record and how I never really associated it with it being a record of a moment in time or a moment, of capturing something. And I always put too much pressure on it and maybe being like needing to be timeless or needing to be something else, and rather than just being like, well, this is where I was at, this is like my thought process, which is expressed in the lyrics, but also in the choice of arrangement and also in the filter that I might have put over my vocals and all these types of things, and just be okay with that.
Yeah, it's like if you think of it as a snapshot, then you know that you wouldn't judge the photograph of you when you were 12.
Yes, I would. What?
But you would know that it was in itself beautiful, like the bicycle, right, that you had or whatever. You loved that bike or whatever. Now you're like, oh God, I can't believe I love that bike so much or whatever. It's kind of the same thing. But no, a certain amount of time has gone by now since my first two records that were on those are the ones I made on Atlantic, and I've listened to some of the tracks off those ones more recently, and what I have found is this incredible distance from that person now, and I have this like it's almost like a motherly or a parental reaction to the performances of just like, oh my God, you sweet dear thing, you know what I mean? Of just like, oh wow, this is so great. It's so great how serious about it all I was.
And is this specifically about the performance or about the lyrics and the song itself?
Yes, it's not about the production because the production just is what it is. It was, it was Toad the Wet Sprocket meets Tony Childs, and that you're not going to get away from that. No, it's about the lyric, both the lyric and the performance, how I would sing, how I sang, my inflections, and and the lyrics. So just extremely interested in self, but that's not unusual for young writing, and it's not unusual for me. I mean,
it's not unusual a lot of writers, for writers.
Writers write about themselves, and so it's supposed to be universal. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm starting to appreciate the early work. I don't know.
Did you ever go to Manray? Well, if you did, I want to hear all about it. Find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook with the username KAndersonMusic. Let me know what you got up to. And also, make sure that you take a listen to Melissa's back catalogue and follow her on Instagram. Her username is, funnily enough, Melissa Ferrick. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I've been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the coming year. You can hear the first single, which is called Well Groomed Boys, and is also playing underneath my talking right now on all good streaming platforms. If you like this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on Apple Podcasts, or just told someone who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.